Everybody, welcome back. So today we're going to be working on what is going to be several weeks, well, one video a week, but several weeks to complete a design that I put together. It's just a kind of a science fiction type scene. Then you're able to show it to them. So we're going to be painting this. We're going to be working from the background forward. I'm going to start the painting in a way similar to the way that I painted the portrait. The grayscale portrait, the way I broke it down. I'm going to be making some adjustments to the process along the way, and I'll explain them as I go and why I'm doing them. So I've already got my transfer in place, and I've toned the canvas blue so that I have some support underneath. And this is toned, it's acrylic paint, but it's toned blue so that when I put blue paint on top of it, it doesn't have to be laid on very heavy, and I'll still get I have a solid base underneath. I could have done this with gray or, you know, anything relatively neutral, but since the painting is very blue, blue seemed the way to go. So I've started mixing some colors here. This is the base for the sky, the darkest version of the sky. This is the lightest value in the sky, and also some of the lights on the planet in the bottom right corner. This is about the value of the mid-tone on the girl's face in the background. This is going to approximate the flesh tone on the girl up front. Also, it'll play into the mountain range back in here, and also the rocks here. And then this dark grayish violet is going to account for the black suit. I don't want to go down with black. I want something colorful underneath. So all of these they're pretty colorful for what I need. I want to make sure I'd rather be a little too colorful than not colorful enough as I start to paint. And so I haven't tested anything yet, so I don't actually know what the density on these paints are. I don't know how this is going to cover, so I'm just going to start by getting a few marks in and seeing what the coverage looks like. I may wind up having to come back in and do another pass on this. If I can help it, I don't want to put any oil in this. I may have to in some places just so the things show through, but this blue is going to require full density, no oil in order to cover. And so I'll just deal with that. So this is going to be about my break point. I'm going to start to get lighter as I come down here, but everything up in here is going to be just this shade. Trying to keep the paint even, not allow it to build up or have any blobs. I want the painting to be without any, well, when it's finished, I don't want you to be able to see brush strokes. And so right away, I start by knocking the paint down a little bit, making sure that it doesn't have any texture in it. So I go back and forth over it, and you can see I'm applying it, just back and forth strokes. Trying to make sure it's relatively even. It's not darker in some places and lighter in others because of the density of the paint. Try to make sure it's all equal. And I'm going to be blending these things later on, all these different colors that I put down, kind of as I go. And I'm just trying to set the stage tonight for what's going to come in the following weeks. This is going to be a very simple pass, but it is a bunch of different things that I have to deal with here. And so you'll get a chance to see how to manage something that has several elements in it. Or the portrait's pretty simple, but this has several elements. And every element in the painting has its own character. The sky, you know, the stars, the planets, the mountain range down below. The two figures are complete. It's the same model, but it's two completely different colors and values, scales. So this will give you a chance to see how something like this is constructed from the ground up. And again, for me, I'm going to go in, I'm going to kind of smooth this stuff out, the surface of it later on. But in the meanwhile, I want to put it on aggressively so that I know every bit of this area is flat. I'm not going to have to deal with paint, different thicknesses of paint going forward. Use a fan brush later on to smooth all of this out and take out anything that's not smooth. It'll even out the blue a little bit. And again, I may very well have to go back in and repaint this a second time after it dries. There may be too much of the panel showing through when I'm finished. Again, if I can get the paint down, even if it's thin, if it's even enough, it won't look like it's patchy. And that's really what I'm trying to avoid, a kind of patchy feel. Again, this comes down, it's kind of in here, and then all of this is filled. And closer to the figures, I'm gonna have to make the paint a little bit thinner so I can see. I want to lose my lines. So I need to be able to see them through this. If not, then I'm going to have to scrub back down to expose the lines. And again, this stuff, I used to do this for a living. I used to do book covers, and they're pretty much what you're seeing here. It's been a very long time, so that process, I don't even remember what the process was of doing this kind of half from memory and half from the way I work now. I'll probably make changes to the sky if I'm finding that it's close, but it's not going to get me where I want it to be because the paint is transparent. I may bulk it up a little bit and put some like down in here in this area. There's lots of like what looks like almost like clouds out in space, and I can build a little bit of that into this up top, and that would be more. The paint would be opaque, and so it'll make the sky feel a lot more solid. If I'm finding that it's close to feeling right, but it's just a little bit too see-through, and that'll save me having to do another pass later on. I don't mind doing another pass. The painting takes what it takes. If the painting needs 2 passes to get something done, so be it. That's it. I try not to find myself there. If I can do something once and be done, that's what I want. But you never really know what you're going to get. Experience certainly helps, but sometimes the paint just does what it wants to do. Our job is to account for it, to compensate for it, to make a good, solid, finished work. I'm not grabbing lots of paint and dragging it up here. I'm grabbing just a little bit at a time, moving it up here and spreading it out, trying not to get too much paint in any one place. And going back and forth to the palette is part of the painting process. I don't treat it like this is extra work. The back and forth is part of the painting process. So word. Yeah. And I'm going to try to keep everything nice and colorful. Again, you can see this paint is transparent. You can see through it when I'm putting it down. The brush, very distinct marks in it. If it were opaque, we wouldn't be able to see any of this. I think that we'll be able to get it, as I kind of pull it, I can want to see if it evens out for me. I'll use a much softer brush. Use a much softer brush to smooth it out. But I just want to see if as I pull it in one direction, what it does. Does it play nicely? So it actually looks pretty good to me. I'm gonna just kind of take a fan brush to it, and while there's nothing else here, and I'm just gonna smooth it out. And again, I'm not. Like, I always tell people, like, fan brushes are like, they destroy more paintings than just about anything else. And so I wouldn't be using it to blend multiple things, but to smooth out the surface of this one color makes a lot of sense to me. And I want to do it before I get anything else down here that I could possibly accidentally drag into this color. Again, like I said, I may find when I'm done that it requires a second pass, or that it requires a little bit more, that it might need some opaque paint built into it, but I'll see that as I go. It doesn't have to be perfectly flat, perfectly smooth, because it's modulating. It's, we're looking at space. There's all kinds of stuff kind of floating around. There's glare, and like again, in these photographs, they might look like clouds. So I can easily break this up as I go. So I'm going to be using a couple of different brushes today, all big brushes. These like 5/8 of an inch. It's an angled brush. So I want to figure out, like I said, I already know that this is my lightest shade. So I'm going to mix a batch of this, and then I'm going to start creating mixtures in between. I'll probably make some of this as well. I'll make probably both of these, because everything in the sky falls between this, and some of this creeping into it. So I'll make a nice batch of each, and then I should be able to basically work my way down the panel. These are going to get thinned down a bit because there's a lot of, the white is opaque. So thin it down with oil, actually. I'm just going to make a very pale violet. Drop a little bit of warm red into it as well. Just a little bit as I go. Again, as I mix it, I'm going to make sure that it's thoroughly mixed. There's no marbling of the different shades that went into it. I can see it's slowly inching in this direction. It needs to have a lot more white put into it. I figure I'll get it to violet first, and then I'll adjust the value. But I'll grab a little bit of my warm red. And the sky in this is not all cool. It is very cool, but there are some warm elements. And so putting out a little bit of a warm red to give it a little bit more variation. As I lighten it, I can see I need a lot more red. Again, I'll just keep moving it along until I get what I need. Obviously, larger painting, I'm covering a lot of space at one time. So I want to mix enough paint that I don't have to go back and do it again. I'd rather throw a little away than have to mix it a second time. So. Pretty close now. Again, it's a simple combination of colors. Get a little bit lighter.
Hey, Kevin, I've got a question for you.
Yes.
Did you use models to create reference for this painting?
Yeah, actually, this girl, it's the same girl. This is my daughter. So I had my daughter Hallie model for this. And you'll see, like, in the reference photo, you'll see she's wearing all kinds of equipment. It's actually paintball armor. And so it looks, for us non-military people, it looks like military stuff. It does a pretty good job it gives me cool, interesting shapes and details to paint. But yeah, this was shot, we have a studio in Hillsborough where the school originated. And we shoot there. And But yeah, and then everything else is stock photographs from Shutterstock.com. A great resource if you need clean professional level photographs for something. So I'm going to get this one mixed. I have no idea how I made that. That's always good. You see, when I'm mixing a new batch, I mix it leaving some of the original untouched so that I can make the comparison. Let me do this again. Anyway, these three colors should give me everything I need for the background. Going back to that question about the shooting the models and everything. So this reference material is then, we get all the different photographs and then we mock it up in Photoshop. Right? And it's good to have some basic photo editing skills. Nothing crazy. All I did was basically cut the figures out, position them where I wanted them, and then made some minor value and color and opacity adjustments to them to make them fit what I wanted, right? To make them fit in the space and look like they belong where they are, in space. You can see I'm just kind of playing with this color, trying to nudge it in the direction of this. And it's a formula. I'm looking at this. I'm saying the color that I have plus what equals the one I'm trying to get. I'm constantly rifling through that formula in my head as I'm mixing. It needs to be a little bit more pink, needs to be a little darker, needs to be a lighter, whatever it is. And so I'm thinking that way the whole time I'm mixing. That guides me in the direction of the final color. Right? It seems like every time I put white in, it starts to get bluer. We start losing that purple. So. Pretty close to the value. Now it's just a matter of getting the right amount of red in here.
Got another question for you, Kevin.
Yes.
Will this painting be raffled off?
No. And there's actually something that I'm thinking about doing. And in fact, Dana, how many people have been watching? About, any idea?
We've got 73 people in right now.
Okay, so I have to get this cleared. It's not, I can't just do it on my own. I have to make sure that it's okay. But I am thinking about, when this is done, making a limited edition print of it and asking anybody who wants one to make a donation to a charity that I'm starting to work with. If you make the donation to the charity, they will send me the information that you made the donation. I think we're going to probably ask for a $100 donation. It's a good charity. And if you make a donation, I will run a full-size print for you and ship it to you. It'll be a limited edition, so we'll do it probably, again, if we do it, we'll do it on the last day. When I finish the painting, we'll set a timer, and we'll do 24 hours. Anyone that makes the donation in that 24 hours will get a print, and say 10 people donate, it'll be a limited edition of only 10 prints. I'll never print another copy, and they'll be signed as well. If we get 100 people, we'll make 100 prints. But we'll get that figured out. I'm not absolutely sure we're going to do it. I have to speak with some people and see what the logistics are. But since the painting is not going to be raffled off, if people want access to it, that's a way that we'll be able to do it. Sorry, I can't just raffle off a painting of my daughter. I wouldn't survive that.
Got another question.
Yes.
Did you ever have anyone discourage your art because they didn't want you to be a starving artist?
Oh, yes, of course. I think everybody falls into that. I'd tell you, when, I'm sure there's video of me talking about this before, but when I first got into doing this, and I was building a portfolio for illustration, it took some time. It took some time. It wasn't like I snapped my fingers and my work was good enough and I had a portfolio. I mean, it took a year and a half, I think, something like that, to get to the point where I had enough skill and I had a portfolio built with that skill, good enough to be able to start getting work. And along that time period, that year and a half or so, pretty much everybody in my life that cared about me recommended that I give it up. Only one person didn't, my older brother. Everybody else in my life, all my friends, my parents, give it up. It wasn't going to happen. I should go and like do something else. And it's funny. I mean, it kind of came down. My mother trying to, and of course these people, they were doing it because they cared about me, and they thought that I was spinning my wheels and wasting my time. And so they were trying to help. But when I finally had that conversation with my mother, about 2 weeks later, I got my first book cover commission. And so all the time and energy I'd put in it was vindicated at that point. But yeah, I mean, you know, it's, everybody hears starving artist. And the thing is, if you're not making money at it right away, like, will you ever? And, you know, it's very easy for people who don't know anything to buy into that idea that there's no money in this. But it's not true. If you know what you're doing, if you have developed your skills, there are going to be people out there who'll be interested in having what you produce. I mean, it's that simple. Plus, I mean, obviously, you have to be able to sell your work. There's more to it than just making good art. But yeah, I mean, I think everybody goes through that. I don't think I know anybody who has gone through this, unless they grew up in a family of professional artists. I don't think I know anybody who's gone through this that didn't get some level of discouragement from the people closest to them. But again, not because the people were, were hating on them or anything. They were looking out for them and trying to maybe give them a viewpoint. They've got blinders on. I'm going to make art. Maybe show them, maybe wake them up a little bit, bring them back to reality. So I think, like I said, I think it's always done with the best of intentions. But yeah, I mean, I think it happens to everybody who goes into the arts in one form or another, you know? So, yep, right there with you.
Got a question here about prints. Do you have any recommendations for getting prints made from an original oil painting?
I run my own prints. There are places, getting a good, clean photograph of a painting, getting it color calibrated, you have to go to a skilled photographer for that. Not just any person's going to be able to do that for you. So, I mean, I live in New Jersey. I used to go into New York City. There are companies built around that. And so, for me, I'm kind of spoiled. Depending on where you are, you'll find companies that do it or don't. I mean, the best thing to do is learn how to use a camera and you set it up yourself. It's not that hard to set up. It takes a little bit of getting used to, but you have to have some basic camera skills in order to do it. And so, on this. To me, like, if you're going to be selling prints, like you're looking to make money that way consistently, just like with any other business, you invest in a camera. It doesn't even have to be a really good camera. It just has to be a functioning camera. And you get a printer that can print 13 by 19. They're not that expensive. And you do it yourself. You're going to be the best judge of when a print looks like your painting. And again, like, all of these things, I'm always cautious about telling people to go spend their money, because I understand not everybody can afford to do these things, and and I mean, when I was younger, I couldn't have afforded any of the stuff I do now. But if you're serious about building out a career in this in some way, shape, or form, just like you would spend money to go to college and you would buy textbooks, you got to put money in to this thing if you're serious about it being a career for you. Right? That's just the nature of it, you know. Again, like you're going to go to college for even accounting, you got to buy books, right? You're not going to get your education without the books. So you just think of it as these are expenses that you're going to run into so that you can do your work. And look, I'm not a wow. Well, I gotta thin this down quite a bit. I'm not a photographer, but I have a lot of camera equipment. I have a full studio with strobe lights and LED lights and cameras and all kinds of stuff because it's what I need for my business, right? And so if you're going to get into this stuff, like again, like I can photograph artwork, but I use my camera in my studio to photograph models for paintings. So my camera skills are used in both directions. One, to capture the information that'll be used to make the painting, and then to capture the painting later on. And so, as far as that equipment is concerned, I only have what I need. I'm not going out because I'm not that interested in photography, as a thing. I'm interested in it because I need it for what I do. I need to be able to get good photographs in order to be able to do my work. Yeah, I'm kind of looking here. It's a little hard to see the drawing through this, and I forgot my glasses somewhere. So I'm just kind of like hoping that I'm able to see through this. I think I can. I think I can see through it. Just a little bit more oil as I go. Again, I just need a smooth base. I don't need much else. Right, and this shade that I'm putting down is more of a value to connect this blue with the lighter ones that are down below. Again, like the original blue that I used it was mostly transparent, tiny little bit of white and a lot of blue, mostly transparent. This one has a lot more white in it. It's a lot denser from this. So it's requiring more oil to be see-through. The truth is, like, you're getting to see me play around with these materials. Like this, if I were doing this all the time, I wouldn't be fumbling around, worrying about being able to see my drawings through it, because I'd have a process every single time I work. It would be the same. I would know exactly what the paint was going to do. I'd be testing things beforehand. You have no idea. I literally like jump into the seat. Like I started looking at the colors about 4 minutes before we jumped on. I had to run over and grab another tube of paint because I didn't have the right blue. Right, so I'm not prepping this stuff in advance and doing test studies. I'm just sitting down and winging it, right? And so you'll see me tripping up and having to stop and recalibrate what I'm doing, because I'm not staging any of this stuff. It's not prepped in advance to make my life easy. So with that, you also have the chance of seeing me possibly fall on my face, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that. Every painting that we do, I say this to Evolve students all the time, I'm solving the same problems when I do a painting as the students in my program, the students in my school. I don't get to sidestep that stuff just because it's my, because I've been doing it for a while. I'm still solving the exact same problems as an artist to make a painting. So I'm going to grab this. Not so much worried about adhering to the image exactly the way it is. But I do want to get the overall feel of it. I want to get the general coloration in place. And I'll play with it. I'm going to take some liberties with it. I'm not into the reference material. Obviously, the reference material is all made up by me. So I can make changes to it as I see fit. At this point, I think I'm just putting down paint, and I'm going to try to wipe it away afterwards. This stuff is just so dense, it's just covering everything. So I think I'm going to just get this down and then wipe some paint away so I get back down to my drawing.
Kevin, I've got two questions for you. We'll start with the first one. Do you have to have drawing skills in order to do what you are doing?
That's actually a really good question. So the question's a little bit more complex than you might think. So you're asking about drawing skills. And I know what you mean. You mean, do you have to be able to draw from direct observation? Do you have to be able to draw? But drawing is so much more than being what the tool is that you're using. It's about how you think and how you see, right? And so if you don't have the ability to see to the degree that you can draw what you see, then you don't have the neural pathways in your brain developed well enough to be able to match colors or to place the shapes even into a transfer, right? You're going to fumble around. Proportional drawing is so much more, or what people think of as drawing, is so much more than just the marks you make. It's what you're able to see, how you filter that information, and then how you can produce, what you produce with it afterwards. And so, though I'd make the assertion that you could do something like this if you're really careful, really take your time. You have to be incredibly patient. But you could do something like this without being able to actually draw from direct observation, but it would be a struggle. And if you're looking for an education in art, not just to be able to do a painting, but to know why it's working, what works and what doesn't, so that you can troubleshoot it as you're working. You can make it what you want it to be, and you're not limited. You really do have to have the skill of drawing. Again, not like cartoons, but being able to draw proportion. Look at an object and draw it faithfully. Was another question?
Yes. So the question is, using several photo references for, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so do you always completely compose your picture before your painting, or do you ever paint one element from a reference one at a time?
Well, when I was doing science fiction work, I was constantly making things up along the way. Like this, I even thought about doing some really cool design on the uniform when I start painting it. I don't think I'm going to have time to be playing those games. I think this is going to be a very straightforward painting, using the reference, a little bit of artistic freedom applied along the way, just if I kind of like something. But for the most part, this is going to be a pretty tight rendering of what's in the photograph, just to make my life easier. But yeah, when I was doing book covers, constantly we put one out. I could do a painting where I had one figure drawn in and everything else in the painting, the board was blank, and I made up everything else in the painting. So I definitely didn't use reference for everything, but I used reference whenever I could. It makes life easier, especially if you're trying to make something realistic. Having realistic reference makes a big difference. Well, I got to admit, I'm a little nervous about what's going on here. I'm just putting paint down, and I'm hoping that after I get it all down and I kind of make it what I want it to be, I can take some of the paint down by going over it and get my drawing back. At the moment, I don't have a drawing at all. If there's no drawing here, like if I can't get that to happen, I'll just paint it in. You'll get to see me do what you just asked. Paint the thing in without reference, or without anything here.
Follow-up question about drawing.
Yes.
So in terms of drawing, in school, I had to do a lot of life drawing and design training to enable me to be very inventive with drawing. So having those skills in addition to proportional drawing helps?
Yeah, anything that you can do, being able to create things out of your imagination requires other skills. Right? You don't just, right? So if you can imagine something in your head, I talk about this with abstract art. If you can imagine something in your head, you want to draw it, you have to be able to get it out of here, get your hand to do what you want it to do to be able to draw it. You have to understand how that works, just like drawing from direct observation. When I talk about abstract art, I think people who having these skills makes you better at painting even abstract art, because art is about intent, right? And so if you have an idea in your head for something that's completely abstract, right? It's kind of a strange thing. Like when we think, we always think in terms of the things we know, tangible objects, a paper towel, an apple, your dog, whatever it is. We can envision those things. But envisioning something absolutely like a full-blown abstract and being able to grab the colors and the values and the edges, because that's what a painting is made of, and build them into a painting faithfully based on what you see in your head, very, very hard. Most people just throw paint at a canvas and hope for something. But that's creativity. It's like if you have an idea, it could be abstract or it could be something representational. To get it out of your head and into the real world in a meaningful way, that requires real skill. And it's all part of the same skill set, right? Again, if you imagine a rabbit, you can proportionally draw it from here, right? If you look at a couple of objects up on a table, you see them, you process them, now they're in here, then you tell your hand what to do. Working from your imagination eliminates the seeing the thing, it only takes it from here. And so, again, it's a skill that needs to be developed, or it should be developed, but it'll develop on its own just by doing proportional drawing. If you imagine something, you'll be able to then create something that is at least representative of it on a canvas or a board. Hope that answered the question.
Now, about the references,
Yes.
when you look for references and are combining different ideas together, do you go out and purchase everything you need for your own photos? Or do you take photos off of the internet as well, like props or things like that?
It depends. Like I said, like the planet here, the rocks, all of that is off the internet. But the girl with the armor and the gun, that material was purchased. Can't make the painting without her, right? If I put her in a pair of jeans and a t-shirt, you know, then she looks like a person standing around. She looks like a regular teenager in a t-shirt and jeans, and that's not gonna work for this painting. So if I want her to look like she's in the military, I need to buy things that make her look like she's in the military. If I want her to look like a futuristic military person, I've gotta have things at hand that make her look that way. So yeah, I mean, buying equipment or renting equipment. There's a costume shop in upstate New York that has, they design armor for Broadway. And so you can go there and get like plate mail armor, chain mail, they have samurai armor. And it's pretty cool. Like if you're doing paintings in going down that path, you can actually get some very, very realistic stuff to work with. And that'll make your painting. Imagine you do a photo shoot, you're doing a painting of a person and they're wearing actual armor. Well, you don't have to fake anything. You don't have to imagine or guess where the light hits it and what the volume is, but you can see the weight of it because it's actually present, it's there. So again, like for me, if I can, I always have reference. And you know, years ago when I did book covers, like if I had to paint a dragon, I built the dragon. I would build an armature and then build it out of clay and then light it under the same scenario as the rest of the painting, the rest of the figures in the painting, so that not only did the object, was it a solid object, but it was lit properly for the scene. You can see I'm making the string as I'm going here. See, I talked about putting some opaque stuff up in here. So this is more opaque than the original blue, which allows me to give the blue a little bit more body, which will mean hopefully I won't have to do another pass over it to make it solid later on. Again, lots of oil being used. This is just linseed oil. Just trying to make sure the paint stays loose so that I can wipe it away afterwards.
How big is this painting?
This painting is 18 by 24. Again, you notice as I put these things down, I'm not blending them. I'm putting them down, and then I'll create an admixture to sit in between. Say admixture, I'm going to create a value between these by mixing them together on my palette.
Another question?
Yes.
Regarding the book covers you painted, did you read the books to get a sense of the characters, or did you use your own creativity exclusively?
No, when I was doing book covers, I actually read every book that I was ever given. I thought that was really, that was part of the job, you know, to be able to faithfully represent. You figure an author spends a year, you know, or like in George R.R. Martin's case, 12 years writing a book. You should take the few hours to read what you're going to be putting a cover on. That's just my take. And it's not always possible, but when you can, I always felt that you should. And so pretty much over the years, the few hundred covers that I did, there might have been half a dozen books that I didn't read because the books weren't ready yet. I remember I did a cover for Magic the Gathering is a card game, and I did the book covers for those when they licensed the stuff out and they were doing books. I did the covers for those, but the books were written, they were always delivered last minute, and so I'd be put in touch with the author to find out what the book was about. And that was about all I could get. But again, it's like, the job is to faithfully represent the book. The only way to do that is to see what's in it. You got to crack the book and read it. So I think most illustrators do to the degree they can. If you're working in, like for me, I was working in a genre I enjoyed, and so I was getting manuscripts a year before the book was going to hit the stores. I mean, it was cool. Some of the books that I did covers for were wonderful. They were great stories, and so for me, I was just ecstatic. I was getting books, before anybody else in the world would get a chance to see them. So yes, kicking back and reading them, yeah, as much as I could. And if you know my story, when I graduated high school, I could barely read. I was borderline illiterate. And I started reading, I was working construction, and I started reading because the train rides were so boring. At 30 in the morning, you're on a train, there's nothing going on, and so rather than be bored, I started reading. And I just got a ravenous appetite for it along the way. So for me, I took speed reading courses and everything after that. And so for me, like reading a book, like for work, I could read a 260-page manuscript in a matter of maybe 2.5 hours, maybe not even. Less than that, I could almost do it over lunch. And so it was never a burden to sit down and read a book for business, for work. Imagine if somebody is a slow reader, you wouldn't be able to read all the manuscripts that come in. The job tough. Again, if you're working in a genre you enjoy, you want to read the stuff.
Following up on those questions about drawing from Mike. So as an example for those skills, the skills that help you to do all these things.
Yes.
Learning things like anatomy, constructive drawing, color theory, as well as the process of thumbnail to final, using the reference as a starting point, all of that plays a role?
Yeah, I talk about things like anatomy. Like if you're going to be painting people, you have to know anatomy. But you should always start by looking first, getting a sense of what the body is by looking at the real thing, and then breaking out a book to fill in the blanks, right? So if you look at the human figure, you watch it move. I'll give you a great example. So your forearm, if you hold it like this, the bones in your forearm go straight. When you turn, they cross over each other. Right, and so there's a distinct look to what happens when the bones cross over. The shape of your elbow changes. Everything about from here down takes on a very distinct look. It's the only place in the body where that happens. And so you might not be able to make sense of exactly what's going on. So if you open up a book at that point, you now have a question. Why does this look the way it looks? Like what's going on? And if you open a book that explains how the arm works, they'll show you those crossed over bones. They'll show it like this, and then they'll show the hand turned and the bones crossing over. I would always go to a book like an anatomy book or a book on perspective or things like that when I have a question that I've already formulated. Because then you can go to the index and you can find what you're looking for and take that piece of information. If you open a book on anatomy and you just spend days and days and days hammering away at it, it's not applicable. so much of what you see there is invisible, absolutely invisible under the skin. And so better to look at the real thing and make sense of it. And when you have questions, go and source the information from a text. And again, that's my take on it. I imagine that most people would say better to start with the book, but I don't find that to be the case. I prefer using the tool that you're going to use to draw with, your eyes. Figure things out as best you can there. And again, there'll be things you're not going to be able to figure out. Those are the things you'll look up. But every skill that you mentioned, it all applies. It all applies. Okay, moment of truth. Can I see through it once I start on? I'm going to use this is a 1-inch brush, and I'm just going to start kind of batting the paint around a little bit. It's going to blend a lot of it, right? Because these colors, in the reference material, these colors, they're kind of there, but not really. So I'm going to allow this stuff to all blend together. Normally, you wouldn't want to contaminate one color with another, but that was my intention from the beginning. Like I've just kind of made marks, and I've left everything soft, so now I can kind of push it together, turn it in from simple ingredients into a soup, where everything kind of marries with everything else. And again, as I'm going to just do this enough until I can see my drawing start to peek through. It's not so thin that it doesn't look solid. Very solid. This around until I find my drawing. I can always go back over it later on in subsequent passes and build something up if I feel like it wasn't strong enough. Add more paint, take paint away. I mean, I can do all of that later on in another pass, like I was talking about, getting the top more dense if need be. So get in here. Again, I may even have to wipe some paint away to get back down to the drawing. I'd rather work in the drawing rather than just kind of wing it later on, just because winging it is going to require a bit more time. You have to kind of creep in close to the painting to do that. Now I'm just going to knock everything down, get it all kind of smooth and soft, and then I'll start wiping away. Try not to move too much paint around. I mean, it's going to mix and blend as I go, but try not to move it around too much. Don't want too much contamination. I'm trying to kind of play the edges. So if there's an edge, I'm kind of working the edge here, not painting and dragging back and forth. That allows at least the center of the color to stay less contaminated. There's going to be a lot going on in here, so even if these things do become contaminated, it's going to be broken up with lights and shadows. Again, remember the background is also far away, and so it's not going to be in sharp focus like the stuff up front. So it doesn't have to be treated with nearly as much care as I would if I were painting in this figure, as far as keeping my values clean, keeping my edges tight and controlled. I've got a lot more latitude to play with this because this is all in the background. I could almost blend it until it's a gray mess, and it would still be fine. Actually, again, like as I'm doing this, kind of troubleshoot it as I go. I almost feel like I want to paint in this face and just kind of start blurring everything, let it all come together, and then start wiping out to recapture things. Like I've got my planet, just kind of in here. So lift a little bit of this. Like, I mean, I'm just wiping this off, and I still feel pretty solid in here. So just looking for my drawing. Drawing is under here. It is really buried. Okay. So again, just kind of playing with how best to get back to my drawing. I think like my original plan on this, not really going the way I wanted it to. So I'm gonna go over this and I'm gonna pull this stuff out. Actually, okay, so actually I'm formulating a plan. So I'm looking at losing my entire drawing under this. And I can see it happening pretty much everywhere as I'm working. And so to troubleshoot this, I can either let the drawing go away and then redraw it basically, freehand as I'm painting later on. But that kind of defeats the whole point of having a transfer. The other option is to thin the paint down, or get the rest of the thing painted, and then go in and instead of blending with a dry brush, having a brush with a little bit of oil and really kind of loosening up this paint and just pushing it around and letting it become a bit of a muddy mess. It's all color, so it's okay. Let it become a bit of a muddy mess, and then just basically treat that as my flats. That's the term we referenced when we were doing the grayscale and the color portrait. But let this stuff become my flats, and then basically start the next week by dropping in my shadows, and then the next week my lights. And I think that strikes me maybe as the way to go. So I'm going to block everything. I'm going to block all of this in very quickly. Quickly. I'll just try to get it done relatively fast. But it's going to get. I'm going to thin it down, so it'll be easy to work with. Again, this might have been the way to go right from the beginning with everything thin like this. Yeah, and again, I'm just kind of playing with it. I'm not rattled by the fact that I'm having to make a major change in how I was going about this. It's all just part of this painting's process. Every painting's going to be different. Sometimes you'll have a plan, you'll jump into it, and it'll be absolutely perfect right from the beginning. Everything will flow, no hiccups, no bumps in the road. And other times you'll struggle. To me, this isn't a struggle. This is just what this painting is asking for. I had a plan for what I was going to do, but the plan is not. It's not working out the way I expected it to. So rather than fight it, I just go along with it. Painting will be fine. I'm not worried about the painting, about losing ground on the painting, that it's not going to be nice. Just an unexpected path for the painting. And again, just figure it out on the fly. You figure it out as you go. The trick is to stay calm. Just a painting. Stay calm, just work your way through it. Well, I seem to run into this every time I paint live. I wonder what I'm doing, because this doesn't really happen to me when I'm just doing my own stuff. Just playing too many games here. I mean, it's good. It's good for you to see that I'm troubleshooting this as I go, right? Because a lot of people, especially like young artists, and I don't mean young like kids. I mean young in making art. when they land against something that doesn't go the way they planned, it can shatter their confidence. And then that painting, all of a sudden, that painting's like a throwaway to them. They just surrender. They think, I can't do this. And you can see, like for me, it's, it's not going the way I planned. Okay, no big deal. I'll just make a new plan, right? I'll just make a new plan. I do it right here on the spot. My experience allows me to do it without my heart rate going through the roof. But there's no guarantee that this painting is going to be successful. I don't, that's never guaranteed. It doesn't matter who you are, as an artist, that's never guaranteed. You do your work, and your experience, of course, factors in. Your skill level factors in. Like, there's a lot of things that factor in and give you a better chance of success. Also, if you start to struggle, your confidence that's been built up over many, many years of painting helps you to not sweat it so much and just kind of push through, right? So there are certainly benefits to having done this longer. Your confidence alone, like you don't sweat it, like you don't see me like rattled here. It doesn't mean that I'm not concerned about the painting becoming problematic, but it doesn't stop me from doing my work. I just kind of keep going. It's like GPS. I'm just looking for a new path. The path I was on, it wasn't working. Looking for a new way to get home, and that's all it is. The truth is, I didn't want to paint in the rings. I didn't want to have to do those freehand. So that's why we're actually scrubbing this out. Again, the planet I'm not going to worry about. I'm just going to leave that the way it is. So put the armor in. Now that armor, again, I talk to myself a lot when I work. I have to kind of work this stuff out of my head. But armor, I think I have enough paint here. Make it nice. We'll wash of some really dark brownish violet. Got to be nice and thin. And even the black suit is actually quite colorful, the underpinnings. Any questions while I'm doing this? Buddy, like biting their nails on the edge of their seat.
Well, you certainly know how to keep us on our toes. I do have one question. Is there any special way to safely dispose of paper towels with linseed oil on them?
Yeah, throw them in your trash. In my whole life, I assume you're referring to spontaneous combustion. In my whole life, I've only heard of one case of that ever happening. Look, they say to keep your rags if you have turpentine on them. Turpentine, right? No, actually, no. I think it's the linseed oil that's the problem. Might be the linseed oil, but yeah, there's what you do is just keep it in a metal garbage can, and until you're going to throw it out. Keep the lid closed so there's no oxygen, right? So even if you get some combustion, there's no oxygen in the garbage can to feed a fire, and so that'll take care of it. But yeah, I mean, I've never seen it myself, and I can't tell you how many hundreds of millions of paper towels with oil on them have gone in the trash around here. I've never seen anything. If I didn't know somebody that it happened to, I wouldn't believe it, because it's like it's elusive like unicorns. I mean, Dan, you think about it. How many years? 14 years we've been doing this. garbage cans filled with rags, combustible rags. Never a fire. So,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, I mean, I would say it's not really something I would be worried about. I've never thought twice about it. But if you are concerned, a metal garbage can with a lid, that'll take care of it. Just have to make sure there's no oxygen, right? Fire doesn't happen if there's no oxygen. You see, as I'm putting this stuff down, I'm just blending it into what's around it. All of these edges are going to wind up blended by the time I'm done. There's not going to be a hard edge between the armor and the background. It's all going to be blended. So I'm not worried about stuff going through. So I'm handling what we referred to as the flats in a kind of looser, more transparent way now. And some of these blues and violets are going to wind up in here on the figure, and some of the figure's color will wind up in the background. And that's okay. I'm not really too concerned about it. You'll get to see me clean that stuff up later on.
Got another question for you.
Yes.
To scrub out, you use a brush to pick up the extra paint, not a clean towel to avoid lint on the surface?
No, you know what? Whatever works, right? I started wiping out with a rag, and then I went in with the brush. The brush allows me to smooth the stuff out a little bit more in a way that that a rag won't. The rag is it's not a surgical tool by any stretch of the imagination. So the brush, at least, it gives me better control over how I move the paint around. It's funny, this thinner paint was my original plan, and somehow it went away when I started painting. Not really sure how that happened. Almost like I forgot it was what I was planning on doing. See, if I can do it, you can do it too. I mean, who is this buffoon? You know, I actually, somebody on Facebook saw one of our ads and posted that. Who is this buffoon? Yeah, and he didn't even see me doing this. The look of me, I guess. Here, I'm just gonna blur the edges a little bit. Keep cutting inside of the view of the camera.
You're good.
Good, but I know I keep like leaning. So here you see, I'm just allow one thing to blend into another. It'll be fine. You see later on when I start pulling everything out, these little intrusions will actually look pretty cool. Everything come together. So what I'm doing right now, by pulling the blue into the face and the black into the background, I'm kind of marrying everything together so that when I work on the face, there's already some of the background color in it. Again, this was actually my plan originally, and I don't know, wound up someplace off in the weeds, working heavier. Because the blue was transparent, I was working heavier. But I'm actually getting back now to what I actually was originally planning. So I'm getting senile. Can't ever remember. I formulated my plan a couple of minutes before we started, and then when I started, I forgot my plan.
It's the joy of painting, Kevin.
I love this. This is fun. You know? Nothing I'd rather be doing. even failing publicly. There's nothing I'd rather be doing than this. I count myself privileged even when I fall on my face. Get to do this every day.
Got a question for you. How long does a painting like this take you? Will you have another painting video like this one?
Well, this one is going to be probably 6 to 8 weeks. So if we're talking 3 hours a day, we're talking anywhere from like 18 to 24 hours, somewhere in there. I could be wrong. It might run a little bit longer than that.
Might depend on how the conversations are rolling.
It depends on the conversations. It also will depend on, how much me having to juggle this and turn it into starting one way and then having to come back, how much that's going to affect how I work on top of it. And I won't know until I've got all of this done and it dries. At that point, I'll be able to make an assessment as to how much time this is probably going to take. But I wouldn't be surprised if we're done in 8 weeks, 24 hours. I don't see any reason why we would go over that, but don't hold me to that. And we'll be doing more of these. I'm planning on doing a lot of paintings. I may have, for those of you who enjoyed the Grand Master portrait, I may be painting it again. Very likely I'll be painting that portrait again. And so I don't know if I'll live stream it. If I do, I may not talk very much because I can't do another 85-hour video. But you may get to see me do the Grand Master portrait again in a totally different technique. Because I won't do it, I never do the same. It's bad enough I'll have to paint it twice. I'm not going to approach it the same way. It'll be handled in a completely different manner. So, and it's just the painting was shipped via FedEx, and I shouldn't say that. I don't know, maybe it wasn't FedEx. It was shipped, and it disappeared. So it looks like it's going to get repainted. I don't know when that'll be. Probably in the next couple of months. So, like I said, I'm not sure if I'm going to live stream that or not. We might. If you're interested, if you've seen the Grandmaster portrait and you're interested in seeing it redone, let us know. Tell Daniel right now. Like I said, I know that it'll be coming this way at some point. So it's just a matter of, do I live stream it or do I just get the painting done?
Got a question from Mike.
Yes.
When you're painting in layers, how does the rule of fat over lean play into what we cover in block 6 in the Evolve program in terms of layering a painting?
Well, first, I want to try to stay away from Evolve-specific questions. Like, these videos are for everybody and anybody. And I don't want people to be like, feel like it's an exclusive club. So I'll answer this one, but I prefer to stay away from Evolve-specific, especially like particular blocks. But basically, fat over lean. The idea of fat over lean is simple. The more oil you have in the layer, the more medium, the more flexible it is, right? And the faster it dries. So if you put down a layer that, let's say you put down some paint and then it dries to the touch and then you put some more paint on top of it, that is less flexible, okay? I'm all over the place with this stuff. But so the idea is that you're layering the paint and you have to have more flexible layers underneath less flexible layers. I'm sorry, when you're putting more medium in, it becomes more brittle. And so if you put down heavy paint underneath and then you put, a thin glaze on top of it, that glaze is going to dry really fast and it's going to be like almost like bruleed sugar on a creme brulee. It's just going to become like a crust. the stuff underneath will still be wet and pliable, and as it dries, it'll recede and crack the surface. So the idea is that you want to build the painting up and you have less oil closer to the canvas, more oil as you get away. When we do block 6 stuff, the technique pretty much keeps the oil, I don't want to say equal throughout, but it's pretty similar, right? Each layer is about the same. So you're not working with paint without oil and then oil on top. Everything has oil in it as you go. And it's the same medium the whole time, which is another thing you want to pay attention to. You don't switch mediums as you go. You want to stick with one medium through the whole painting. But basically, another thing is the way that we paint so thin. Paint layers are, especially in block 6, those layers are so thin that when they're dry to the touch, they are dry because they're two-dimensional. They don't have a depth to them. They're like 1,000th of the thickness of a piece of tracing paper. So when it's dry on the surface, it's dry. So you don't have to worry about expansion and contraction of what's underneath when you put subsequent layers on top. If you put a layer on top and and the paint underneath doesn't lift, doesn't rub away, that means it's dry, at least in that technique.
So if you were to redo this painting, how would you do it differently?
I have no idea. I'll figure it out about 5 minutes before we turn the camera on.
I'm sorry, I'm referring to the Grandmaster portrait.
That's what I mean.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if I do that painting over, I'll figure out what I'm going to do with it, how I'm going to paint it, just before we turn the camera on. That seems to be the preferred way of doing this. This is actually going to be turning into a very short painting night, because once I get this in, start pushing everything around, once I can see my drawing, I'm done. You know what's funny? Like I'm sitting here thinking about, for those people who are involved, how strict the program is. I'm like, my approach to painting is so diametrically opposed to the way I teach it. As you can see, it's nothing but chaos. It's pretty funny, at least to me. Yeah, do as I say, not as I do. At least while you're learning. Once you know what you're doing, you can do whatever you want. But while you're learning, best to do as I say.
That's a big part of Evolve's mission, right? Like, you learn these things as rules so that you have the freedom to create as you see fit in the way that you want to.
Yeah.
Because you understand them.
Yeah, the idea, with Evolve, we're not trying to what we're doing is we're giving you rules because you need them to learn. But you don't need them to paint. You need them to learn. Once you learn and you know how to paint, the rules don't apply anymore. They're just, they function to guide you, but that's all they do, nothing else. Be awful if you spend years developing a skill and it only works when you do it in a rigid way. So eventually you want to be able to just kind of like grab some paint and a brush and just kind of riff. Even this, I'm pulling some of the rocks on the bottom, pull that color up into the armor a little bit. Again, just trying to marry everything together since I'm doing it this way. Again, I'm repurposing colors as I go. Rather than making new colors, I use what's already made, mix it together to create other combinations. That helps to unify the painting a bit. The gym upstairs, they're doing deadlifts. It's asking them not to, didn't work.
Robin Ferguson just shared, I love that Kevin is letting us see the real process of a painting with all its mistakes and uncertainty.
Yeah, and it's this. I think this is like as a teacher, I think this is a great thing. I struggle with the same things that everybody else does. You're in block 1, exercise 3 in Evolve. You're struggling with value. Well, you're just in grayscale, but values and edges. And I'm dealing with that here. I'm having to figure out, even though I'm going to be building the painting up, I'm still managing those things here. And nothing is guaranteed. I don't care how long you've been doing this. It's not guaranteed. You've got to get in, roll up your sleeves, and do the work. And like for me, I actually like the risk of just throwing myself into the painting and seeing where it goes. I'm confident enough in my skills to fix any damage that I do. And so it's liberating to be able to do that. And that's, people ask, well, doesn't learning realism, what people think of as realism, doesn't that like mess with your creativity? And it's like, for me, I'm free to be creative as I'm working in every mark I make, because I'm not afraid of not being able to get what I want later on. If I decide something's not working, I know how to get back to where I want to be. And there's a real freedom in that. It's like, just, like I said, for me, I'm freed up because of my knowledge. I don't need a drawing. I have one, it's good. I don't have one, that's fine. Do I want to work with that one for like the planet? No, because these rings, they're going to be a lot of work. So for me, I want that to show. But I don't need any of this stuff. It turns it into a very different project if I let stuff go away. But it'll still be a good painting in the end. I'll make sure of that because I won't stop until it's done. And I know a lot of instructors wouldn't want their students seeing them struggling with something, and I understand that. It's easy for someone on the outside, to not understand the skill level of an artist that's producing, professional level work. And, you see a mistake, we're almost like, it's ingrained in us as human beings to point at the person who fails and kind of laugh. And so I understand, from the standpoint of, you do this for a living and, you have a reputation you have to maintain. But I don't know. I mean, just to me, I like the idea of sharing the fact that this is not guaranteed. Because I think people get the impression that once you get to a certain point, it's all easy. It's not that it's easy, it's just familiar. I think that's really what it is. It's that it becomes familiar. And you get comfortable when you sit down and you work. That's going to be a nice short night for me tonight. Just got a little bit of blending to do. Some of these edges again. Just going to move the paint around, flatten everything out, make it smooth. I don't need to see everything, but I just want to see some stuff. Just want to see some of the edges. Make sure all of my gradients, my transitions are soft. There's a story I tell, talking about like the process, making mistakes and kind of working through them. I went to a portrait conference years back, and a really, really good portrait painter. He's one of the best guys around. His name is Michael Shane Neal. Really incredible portrait painter. I mean, the guy is just, I don't even have the words. He's just so highly skilled. And he was doing a portrait, a live sitting. And, we have there's maybe 500 people in the audience. Most of them, they're aspiring portrait painters. So even when he's making mistakes, they can't see them. So he blocks in the head, and he gets it was the eye on the right side, the sitter's right eye. And he starts blocking in a basic shape, and it's from 40 feet away, easy to see it. It's not right. He puts it in, not detailed, just some basic shapes, and then moves on and starts painting other things. A minute or two later, just a casual brushstroke, and he just wiped the whole eye out. But he didn't do it right away. He kind of went and started doing other things, and then went back and took it out, so nobody would notice. It was just one more stroke in the process. A few minutes later, he circled back around, he placed the eye again, still not right. And then just moved on and did a little bit of work in the collar and a little background, and then wiped the eye out again as he went over here and did some other stuff. He did it 3 times. Put it in, took it out. Put it in, took it out. Put it in, took it out. Never stopped to say, ooh, yeah, that's not right. Let me take that out and I'll do it again. He just moved on and then came back to it. Now, all of the professionals that were watching knew, when we saw him do it, we knew the shape wasn't right. And not because not for anything other than the fact that, you're doing this on the fly with an audience of 500 people watching you, and not every stroke goes down exactly as you intend in the moment. And it's easier to see the mistakes when you're not the one doing the work. The further away you get, the easier it is to see. So eventually on his 4th pass, he nailed it. But it would have been a wonderful thing if he had stopped and said, hey guys, you know what? I put this eye in. This is the 4th time I put it in to get it like this. I think that would have been a wonderful, wonderful learning experience for all of these people who, rightfully worship at the idol of his portrait work. The guy's incredible. But he needed a little bit of time. And he needed to get some context before that eye came around for him. And there's nothing wrong with that, but most of us hide from that. And that doesn't do anything for our students except for give them a wrong idea about how the work is always the work. It's always the same. And that no matter how good you are, you have to solve the problems that the painting poses. Right? And so, again, I mean, everyone's different. Everyone thinks differently about this stuff, but I don't know. I don't mind falling on my face in front of people where I'm doing this, because in the end, I can knock this out if I have to. And even if it doesn't work out really well, if it's just okay, that's fine. Like, this isn't a paid job. I wouldn't feel that way if it was a paid commission. But like, I'm doing this is for fun. What I'm doing here, what I've been doing in these live streams, purely for fun. I'm only painting what I want to paint. And so I'm coming here to play. Not worrying about where this stuff winds up. And mind you, that doesn't mean I don't get frustrated if I'm trying to do something and it's not working. I get frustrated just like everybody else. It would be nice if I could just dip the brush and touch the canvas and make a beautiful painting. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that, not even for me. Go around, I want to start kind of playing with some of these colors, kind of putting some blues down in here, some reds up in here, just to kind of play around a little bit and kind of make the painting feel unified. If there's nothing but blue up in here and nothing but red down here, the painting feels disjointed. So, again, just a little bit of blue. I don't need a lot. Just a little bit of blue. And just, again, I'm not looking to do a lot. I'm just looking to get little hits in here so that it feels like it's in the same space that's lit by this blue up above. Even pull it up into the leg a little bit. And these are complementary colors. If I push them around too much, they'll all turn to gray. Complements do that. So I just want to lay it down, and then I'll just take a brush and kind of blend it together. So I'm putting down strokes. Some are thicker, some are thinner, just with the intent that I'll get different amounts of blue. A thicker area will look more blue. A thinner one will be more gray, leaning towards those reds.
Hey, Kevin.
Yes.
Have you done much landscape plein air painting, or do you mostly like to do studio painting?
I'm not a big fan of plein air painting. It's challenging, and it's fun, but it's like it's out in the sun with the bugs, and I pay for air conditioning. I like this. Just partial to it if I have the choice. I used to do plein air painting with my daughters. Take 3 easels and I'd set them up and I'd put all the paint out and they'd spend about 3 minutes and then walk off. I did that for a couple of years with them, and eventually stopped that. But I'm not big on plein air painting. I like my studio setup. I like the comforts of being able to walk over and pick something up if I need it. And if I go out into the field and I forgot something, I don't get to work with it. So for me, yeah, I prefer studio. Though I do recommend that you try it. It's a very different experience than painting in a studio. Very different experience. Definitely worthy of playing with. Just trying to get some color in here.
Question from Nicholas.
Yes.
How do you determine which edges you keep soft on the silhouette of an imaginary painting like in the foreground?
You know what? It's a matter of the effect that you're looking for, right? I mean, it always comes down to that. When you get to the point where you're making paintings that are an expression of your ideas alone, you have to know what you want, right? So you know what the edges do. The edges, if you have a gradient, it explains volume and it can explain depth, like distance. And so you put it where you need it for what you want. I mean, it's that simple. If you know what you're doing, if you know how these things work, you just kind of pick and choose where you want things to be to do what you want them to do, right? If you want something to be further away, you're using a gradient to dissolve an edge, or you're adjusting a contrast ratio in order to make it look further away than something else, right? But you have those skills, you understand how they work in order to give an illusion, to create that illusion, and then all you have to do is figure out what you want the illusion to say, and then push the paint around to say that, right? And again, you have to know what it is you want to say in order to be able to do that. It's not going to happen on its own. And this is where having real skills matters. You know, if you don't understand how something works, how can you manipulate it? How can you control the material? Because make no mistake, like painting making art is about control. Even when you're doing abstract art, it's about control. If you can't control the materials, if you don't understand how they work, how to manipulate them to get what you want as a result, you're just working on luck, right? And so, you know, a lot of abstract artists, that's exactly what they do. They're just kind of winging it, hoping something nice comes out of whatever it is their technique is, throwing paint from across the room, you know, buckets with holes in the bottom to spill on top of a canvas. Whatever it is, it's a crapshoot, right? And if you want better than that, you want better odds at having a good painting, you have to understand how everything works. If you understand how it works, you can create whatever you want, right? Again, like this, having this knowledge empowers. It's that simple. And I'm just trying to bring everything together. Soften it, make sure I'm not leaving any hard edges in between shades. Make sure everything feels like clouds. I think tackling the painting this way is going to add one more day onto the painting, but I'm completely fine with that. Could be wrong. It might actually shorten the amount of time it takes to do the painting. Knock some of this stuff down. I'm actually going to stand up to do this. It's like getting up top is this is more, it's a little bit more athletic to do this part. So. All I'm trying to do is make sure I can see my drawing. I don't mind all the crossover of colors, everything to kind of marry together. And it looks linear, or a hard edge. We're going to knock it down. I'm going to keep dragging the paint back and forth until the edge gives way. I don't want to have anything sharp in here if I can help it. Again, clean my brush from time to time just to make sure I'm not dragging too much of one, like I had a lot of blue in the brush, so I get some of that off the brush. And some of these color combinations, just dragging the blue down into the orange, you're not going to get them by painting them directly. Allowing this kind of back and forth brush stroke. Again, you have to be careful not to overdo it, but you can get some nice color combinations that you wouldn't get just simply by painting something directly or more directly. I'm getting, if I see like hairs from the brush or anything like that, I pick them up as I go. And down here with these blues, trying not to blend them in too much. I don't know how much of them will wind up in the final painting, maybe none. I may wind up painting over it entirely. I don't know, but at least for now, the blue looks nice down in here. Helps to marry the top and the bottom of the painting together.
Question, Kevin?
Yes.
Do you store the painting any special way overnight until the next session to keep it from getting dust or particles caught in the painting?
Yes. What I do is I turn the painting facing against a wall and then tip it forward. So any dust falls on the back of the board rather than on the front. Preferably get it off the ground so that, if people walk through a room and there's any dust, it gets kind of pushed around. So if you have it off the ground against, like up on a shelf against a wall, face in, that should protect it from the vast majority of anything that might contaminate your painting. Kind of liking what I've got here. Sound surprised. Yeah, I mean, I'm basically gonna call this a night. I mean, there's really nothing else to do. So I'm going with a fan brush right now, and I'm just going in and I'm taking out any brush strokes that bigger brush put in. This is so soft. It doesn't cut through the paint. It just kind of polishes the surface. Bigger brush leaves distinct marks every time I put the brush down. It leaves a mark. So I want to make sure I'm getting rid of any of that kind of ugly brushwork.
And how long would a layer like this take to dry, to be dry enough to work on the painting again?
Well, you know what? I didn't use any Alkyd medium, which was a big mistake. I should have put Alkyd in it. It would be dry tomorrow. Because I used oil, this is probably going to be like 3 or 4 days to dry. So, which is fine. I don't come back to it for a week. So it's not a big deal. But no, if this were an illustration for an actual job, it would have to be dry tomorrow for me to go back in and work. And so I would have used an Alkyd medium. That would, like I said, it would dry overnight. For the most part. I mean, it depends on the colors, but the Alkyds, they dry pretty fast.
Another question?
Yes.
Will you go back and redo this sketch?
No, I can actually see the sketch. And that's why, like, I've done what I've done. I was losing the sketch entirely, and now I've recaptured it. I can see everything. Everything looks solid. Nothing looks see-through, really, well, except the what's black here. Everything else looks relatively solid, and so at least solid enough for what I need. And so I'll be able to paint right on top of this. I'll be able to probably jump in with the same technique that I was using for the portrait. Again, that's very likely the direction I'm going to take this now. Probably maybe a little bit thinner. The paint will be a little thinner than what I did in the portrait. Just pull everything in one direction. Let's just make sure there's no brush strokes in the painting. Very smooth. It's already smooth because there's very little paint down. But just in case I have brush strokes going left to right on diagonals, this will take them out and make sure that everything looks like it moves in one direction. It makes the painting very smooth, which is nice. At least I like the aesthetic. The way that looks.
A couple questions about Alkyd.
Yes.
Does an Alkyd medium change the way that you paint at all?
Well, no, I mean, it dries faster. But it's just like any other medium. You put it into the paint, it makes the paint thinner. But no, it's, like I said, I mean, any of these mediums, you use them, you get used to them. So like an Alkyd, if you use it, generally speaking, in paint like this, if you make it really kind of thin, the paint will start drying up on you in about 2 hours. Like glazes, if you have just an Alkyd, it'll start to seize up and get sticky in like 10 minutes. So Alkyds are great for certain things, but you have to be used to using them. If you're just putting a small amount in your paint, it's not a big deal. Like if I took a batch like one of these and I put just a couple of drops, maybe not dry it overnight, but so a paint that would maybe take 5 days to dry will dry in 2. So it's a big difference if you're trying to get your work done. If you're in a rush to get something done, the Alkyd's going to be really helpful. Like I said, for me, this can stay wet until next Wednesday because I'm not going to touch it. So as long as it's dry on Thursday next week, I'm ready to go in and do the next part, right? And so like next week, what I'll probably do is I'll probably knock out the background, the planet, which is in here with the rings, the rest of the sky, all the way down in here, and maybe even try to get the planet in. And then the week after, I'll get her face done. And if possible, the mountain range back in here. If it's not possible, if I only get her face done, then I'll do the mountain range and start this figure the next week. So what is that? 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, 5. Finish the figure the next week, hopefully, maybe 2 weeks. And then the last day, knock out the rocks. But like I said, we're talking about maybe 6 weeks, 7 weeks. It shouldn't be too bad, but we'll do it a little piece at a time. I'm going to work from the background forward. So this figure will be one of the last things that goes in. The rest of the painting, other than the rocks in front of her, will be finished when I start putting her in. And then it's a matter, I decide whether or not I want to start at the top or start at the bottom of the figure. If I start at the bottom of the figure, I build it up from the rocks so that it connects to the rocks. If I do the head first, I have to figure out where I want the head in space relative to what's ghosted in the face in the background. And so this requires a little bit more thought so that I place her in space the way I want her, where if I start at the ground with the rocks and I work up into her legs, I just keep working up and she basically comes up from the rocks. She becomes connected to this frontal plane. So it's easier to do that, but for me it's more fun to kind of go from the head and work my way down. I don't know what I'll do. Again, when I do these, this is not about me making paintings. This is about me showing you how to make paintings, right? Not even how I make them, how to make them. And so maybe even though I might want to work from the head, it might be more beneficial. I might decide when we get there that it'd be more beneficial to you to see me paint it from the ground up, make sense of that. The less you know, the better the approach to go from the ground up is. So, but we'll see. We'll see. As you can tell, I mean, I'm just winging this stuff as I go, because this is playtime for me. You know, it's funny. I don't get to paint that often these days. If I'm painting, it's only because there's a commission that I have to get done, or I'm doing little demos at the school. But I'm not really making paintings, and I miss it. And so, getting in here and being able to do this, I'm not taking it. I hate to make it sound this way, but I'm not taking it that seriously. I'm just having fun, and I'm trying to give you some ideas about how to move your own work forward. You know, I always say, this isn't an education, this is theater, right? What you're seeing is my experience. I can talk about the knowledge that goes into it, but it's really my experience that you're seeing at play here. And so it's fun to watch. But for me, like I said, there's no pressure. I'm just here to play. So I know that was all. I don't even remember what the original question was. But
It was about Alkyd. Actually, could you scoot your chair up a little bit for us?
there we go.
Thank you.
Back on screen.
Yeah. So a follow-up question about the Alkyd. Does working with Alkyd on a painting in an enclosed space cause long-term health problems because of the ingredients?
Yes. So Alkyd has like turpentine. It's like, depending on which brand you get, it's white spirits. I know that Old Holland has white spirits in their Alkyd. So yes, you should use an Alkyd in a ventilated space. But again, like, you're not going to have this big open vat and stick your head over it. You have a little bit of it mixed into your paint. You don't need ventilation for that. But if you have a little can sitting there opened all day, yeah, you shouldn't do that. But there's no need to do that. Once you mix it into the paint, I mean, it's, again, I forget, there's all kinds of formulas for like how much time you should be away from it after you've been around it, for detoxing and things like that. I think it's like 8 hours on, or maybe it's more than that. But trust me, unless you're working professionally, you're not going to be at an easel around that stuff long enough for it to have an impact. I wouldn't worry about it too much. A lot of those warnings, they're there because people do dumb things, right? So, years ago, people used to wash their hands with turpentine. And you may as well be drinking it, right? And so people didn't know, people didn't think about it. But these days, we're a lot more conscious of these agents that cause cancer and brain damage and all this other stuff. And so just as long as you're not leaving an open bottle sitting where you're working, you put a little out, mix it into your paint, you don't have to worry about it. It's really not an issue. Anything else?
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, now is the time. I believe we're just about wrapping up. Right,
Yeah,
Kevin?
I mean, I'm basically done. I'm basically done. I'm going to leave it just like this. I think it's staged nicely for whatever comes next.
Yeah, we'll just give it a few more seconds.
Sure.
So final call for questions, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. It was a nice short evening. They're not all going to be short. I think we've run over pretty much every night except for tonight.
Yeah.
And it was just because I forgot what I was doing that we were cutting it short today. I mean, I originally thought I was going to get the whole sky done, finished. But this is good though. I'm actually liking this. I'm happy with where it took me. I think I can see all the lines that I need. I should have known it was going to be a bad night when I sat down and I didn't have my glasses. But I think I can see everything, so we should be pretty good going forward.
Cool. So we have one last question here.
Yes.
And real quick, Mary, to answer your question, this one will not be raffled off, and Kevin explained that a little bit earlier in the live stream. But Rebecca asked, if the painting is in the same room as you with Alkyd, should you be concerned?
Okay, so once it's dry, no. Second thing is, if the painting is wet and it has some Alkyd in it, again, first of all, the Alkyd dries very fast. It dries very fast. So it's not the same as being in a room with an open bottle of turpentine, right? Turpentine, it evaporates, it's in the air. And you're talking about like an open jug, but the amount of Alkyd you're going to use is really nominal. You shouldn't be getting it on your hands, and don't eat you shouldn't be eating where you paint either. If you're going to eat, walk out of the room. Not that any of, at least with Evolve, none of the paint is toxic. And the regular oil that we give you is not toxic. You can eat all of it. Don't, but you can. It's not going to kill you. But again, turpentine or anything that has turpentine or spirits in it, like an Alkyd, is not good for you. You don't want to eat if you have that stuff on your hands. But again, once you mix it into your paint, it's really not an issue. It's really not an issue. And when you paint, again, an Alkyd, it's going to be dry. It's going to set up and kind of skin over, I mean, maybe like 2 to 3 hours. After that, I don't think you have anything to worry about. Like I said, I've been using Alkyd for got to be more than 25 years. I have no side effects of any kind. You know, your hands shake, there's like nerve damage. I have no issues. I don't know anybody responsible that uses these materials that has any problems. Again, you know, the issue in the past was that people didn't know. Again, they washed their hands with turpentine, which is insane. But people didn't know. We know better now. And so don't worry about a little bit of Alkyd medium having some spirits in it. Unless you're eating it, it's fine, okay? I know people worry, but you don't have to worry about this stuff. And most of you, again, if you're working 8 hours at a painting and then you're out of the room for the rest of the day, you've got more than enough time to detox from the tiny, tiny, tiny amount of anything that you might have breathed in, right? And that's all you need. You need a little bit of detox time. And so, like I said, I wouldn't worry about it. Don't sweat it too much. But don't eat the stuff. That's key. Anything else?
Always good advice.
Yeah, don't eat it.
That's it. Thank you,
Okay.
Kevin.
Well, everybody, thank you very much for coming. I was originally expecting a much longer night, but you know, I say this to my students all the time. Just because there's time on the clock, paint on the palette, and a brush in your hand doesn't mean you should paint. Sometimes you just stop because there's nothing left to do. For tonight, I can only make a mess. So at this point, better to just stop, let the painting dry like this, and hit this thing hard next week, which is exactly what we're going to do. We're going to get push this thing way down the road next week. And so I'm looking forward to working on this. It's actually the first science fiction piece I've done in probably 22, 23 years.
Wow.
So it was a lot of fun doing the photo shoot. I love the fact that I'm going to get to paint my daughter. And it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. So, again, I know you guys can do anything you want with your time. The fact that you came here and spent it with me, it's appreciated. And we'll see you next week. Have a great night.
Awesome. Take care.